So, okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce our third invited speaker, Mary Hayhoe. Mary is a professor at UT Austin. She is past president of Vision Science Society, that is the major society for people study human vision systems. And this year, she just received the Tita Taylor Award for her exceptional contribution to vision science. So I want to say a few words about her research. So most people in vision use, if they call it the passive viewing paradigm, like Karen mentioned in her talk. So basically, you invite people to the lab, you put them in front of a computer screen, and you put the stimuli on the computer screen, and you measure their reaction time or where they look, and so on. So we've seen a lot of interesting egocentric videos today from Karen's talk, from Stream talk. But I suspect that if we put a head camera on those subjects, we would get a really boring video there, because there's no dynamic, just one trial after the other trial, and so on. So I think one of the reasons people using this paradigm is because, as Karen mentioned, the availability of technology, because it's easier to do eye tracking, remote eye tracking on the computer screen. But meanwhile, we don't want people to move. If they move their head, we lost data. We don't want them to generate action, and so on. The other reason is that I think if we want to study human vision in more naturalistic context, and then there are many factors interact really in very complicated way. So that is really not easy to study that. So I suspect many people might think about that and feel it's too challenging to make meaningful progresses. So they decide to use this passive viewing paradigm. So Mary's research is really exceptional in the sense that she really tried to study human vision in the context of naturalistic behavior and in the context of dynamic action. Her research showed there are ways, really creative ways, to really ask interesting questions with naturalistic behavior, but still in the laboratory settings. The last thing I want to mention is really a personal note. So I spent 5 years in Rochester, so I've been to the joint lab meeting that Dana and Mary host, but I never published paper together with Mary. However, I feel from all these interactions back to the time, they just, I think, planted some seed in my mind. It really changed the way I think about things dramatically. And also, if I think about what I'm doing right now with all this dual eye tracking paradigm we're doing, is really influenced by Mary's work. So this is just a personal account of the impact of Mary's research. So please welcome Mary Hayhoe.
Thanks, Chen, and this is thanks for organizing this workshop. It's really fascinating, and I'm incredibly excited at all the work that you and the people here have been doing over the years, and it's totally breakthrough work. So this is really great to be here. Please, at the back of the room, if I start to sort of fade and you can't hear me, just like, because it's really annoying if you can't hear. As an old person who's not hearing so well these days, I can tell you, it's really annoying. So please, and the other thing is like interrupt at any point, and particularly it's we're a sort of very mixed audience. So what do we do when we look at natural behavior? It's a big, complicated problem, and so I just sort of want to talk about a number of different results and give a bit of an overview of how we might approach these problems. And so this is John Mathis walking across the street. This is something we do every day, and let's see if this works. Oh, I have to make this. So there we go. And so this is his eye movements from a head-mounted camera, and so you can see he's busy doing stuff, and so we can think of, so why do we need vision? You've got to get information about the world to guide your actions, okay? But you need to make good decisions. So let's look at this in slow-mo now a little bit. And so you can see, so gaze, if we just think about gaze, it's going from one place to the next, and something's guiding it, because it's clear when you look at any of these videos that it's quite purposive. So these eye movements are not random, okay? And so what's guiding the selection of information from the world to guide your body through it? And so if we look at, if you look at where people are fixating here, it's like the things that you need. You don't want to bump into this cyclist. You need to know where he's going. Look at the traffic light. We don't know what this is. Maybe it's heading. Maybe it's, is there a curve there? And so on. And so one of the ways of thinking about natural behavior is to say, you've got a bunch of stuff to do. We don't exactly know what those things are, but we can identify a bunch of little tasks that you have to do when you're walking across the road, which is not bump into things, don't trip over something, get where you want to go, and that kind of stuff. So, and from other work, we've shown that for each of these specific action gathering gaze deployments, you're usually getting quite specific information. So if you're putting a block down on the table, you're controlling the hand, you're not really getting information about the shape of the block or other visual properties. So it can be very, very specific. And so what we have to, so if we ask the question, what determines these little subtasks that you're doing? And how do you go from one gaze location to the next? So I just saw there was an obstacle, I know where it is, and now I need to say, where is there another obstacle, or should I look at the ground, or whatever. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that control these transitions from one gaze location to the next. So one of the big things, again, when you look at natural behavior, is just the rewards and costs of those actions. I'm going to talk about memory, and then I'm going to talk about your uncertainty about the state of the world, because that's what vision has to do for us. So rewards and costs. So we know that there's a huge amount of work now over the last 15 years or so about the importance of the dopaminergic reward machinery, and also its role in the control of gaze. Practically every eye movement region not only computes where you're going to go, but how good it is for you. But in spite of this large body of work, these are all sort of within fairly rigid experimental paradigms. And so how does that play out in your natural behavior? And I want to argue that it's a very pervasive and fundamental part of behavior. And so this is way back in Rochester, Jeff Pell's back in the 90s. And so he was doing this task inspired from robotics, where you have a model pad and you pick up blocks here and you make a copy. And so first, just to mention, again, this is very old. So what happens is that you make lots and lots of eye movements back to the model, okay? And so that's all very well. So you're trading off working memory. Sorry, I misstepped there. But you're trading off eye movements and working memory. And now, but the interesting thing that I want to mention is that what you saw was when the model and the copy are close together. And but what happens when you separate them by like 100 degrees, so now you make a head movement, maybe even shoulder movements. So then you start looking at the model substantially less. So this trade-off between, are you going to make this eye movement or not, depends. It's very sensitive to just how much is it going to cost me. And so it's just, this really struck me way back then. It's like, wow, you know, how do you make these decisions so on this very rapid time scale? So so you're making these rather what seem like a complicated decision in this time scale of 100 milliseconds, and it all seems to, and it's sort of very regular across different observers. And so how does this all happen? And this has been replicated subsequently. So I want to give another example now, and this is, first of all, there's work by John Mathis and Fajan, and what they showed was they manipulated the amount of visual information. So I think you have to either step on the blue things or not on them. And they manipulated how far ahead you could see. And what they showed is that you need to see at least 2 steps ahead in order to take advantage of the passive dynamics of the body. And this is the most energetically. We all sort of naturally choose our most comfortable walking pace, which is the most efficient one. So what John has done at UT has now, he's been asking the question, well, okay, you need to see 2 steps ahead, but what do you actually do? Is this where you choose to look? And so he instrumented the body. This is the motion shadow body tracking system, and the eye. This one under here is the positive science tracker. We've lately been using the pupil labs. Let's see. There we go. So that lurid pink ray is his gaze direction, and you can see you've got the whole integrated body and gaze, and you can see that the spots are the future locations of the feet, and so and we also have the image of the from the scene camera of what you're actually what the visual scene is, so we can integrate all these things. And so the question then was, where do you look? And so glibly gliding over a whole lot of data analysis, so if we, if we look at the a medium kind of terrain there, and this is where you're spending your gaze time, and this is aligned to step n+2. So this is 0 is you're looking exactly n+2 steps ahead. This is where your foot will be twice later. So it's clear, and this is, these little bars here are about the length of a foot, right? So a big chunk of your time is spent looking at n+2, which is what you would expect from this idea of that you want the most energetically efficient walking. If it's closer, you have to brake, right? But now if we look at more complex terrain here, this is quite rocky, you also start spending a fair bit of time on step n+3. And so for a very rocky terrain like this, it's not all about energy. There are other things that come into play. And this is, I think, one of the interesting questions about natural behavior is, what are all these costs? So energy is a simple one, but there are other things like time. And in this particular case, the stability, right? So you don't want to trip. You want to find a nice, stable place to put your foot. And so that's an extra thing that has to come in and get trade. They all have to somehow go into the pot and determine on this moment by moment basis where you're looking and where your foot is going.
So the reason you're further ahead, you look further ahead because you have to plan stable placement.
Well, it's like you have to, you not only control this n+2 foot, but you have to make sure that you got a good place to go after that.
So it's really planning a sequence of stable steps. Then you need to go further to do that.
Yes, I think so. We don't actually know. This is a suggestion, and so this is just a hypothesis. We're just observing and making up stories, but I think these are all important questions to take into the lab and try and examine. So yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting that the point I'll come back to is like, what do you have to do when you walk around? You know, what are the demands? Like, you've got to, you know, you find a good place to put your foot, but you have to control your direction as well. You have to know where you are, and all kinds of things. And so that's a level of analysis that I think it's really important for us to help appreciate what the visual system is doing for you. And so again, just this is a little bit of an aside, but just because of the topic of this meeting, I sort of throw in this more complex stuff. So this is really very rich data set and lots of questions you can ask. So here, these are the footsteps, and this is sort of gaze, and so you can relate where gaze is and the footsteps. This is looking down the bird's eye view. You've got the eye on the head, you've got the head on the body. And so I think there's a very rich data set there that is sort of right for kind of interesting analyses, like, you know, how much do you move the head, how much do you move the eyes, and how good is the vestibulo-ocular reflex, and all kinds of things like that. So, but now there's another reason I included this is because I'm just going to do this little aside and now think about what's the visual stimulus you're getting. And so we've all been raised on these textbook examples of sort of optic flow fields, and that a lot of effort went into examining the role of the focus of expansion, and that, you know, it's very common to read papers saying, well, you need the focus of expansion in order to control your heading. And so if you now, this is actually, so what John did here was he got, this is from the scene camera, and he just calculated the little motion vectors from one frame to the next. And then, I'll play that again. And so here, this is just the summed motion vectors, the sort of amount of motion in the field. And so the first thing you can see is it's pulsing with the gate, right? And so the optic flow is very tightly linked to the gate cycle. And so where is the focus of expansion? Oh, actually, before I do that, the next slide, this just shows also, so this is a different kind of terrain. This is flatter terrain. And so again, you can see that the pattern of motion is very different. And so now, so what's this? This is actually with a better camera, from the Pupil Labs tracker. This is the fifth speed. Excuse me. Fifth speed playback. The crosshair is gaze, of course. And so John calculated the focus of expansion, and this is kind of where the sort of optic flow is pointing as a function of time. And so you can see that the focus of expansion is sort of whirling around all over the place. And it's a little disconcerting watching it even at this speed, which is a fifth of real time. But you can see it's really, it's very squirrely. It's not a single focus of expansion. It's up there showing us where to go. So what is it doing, right? And so again, I don't know the answer to this, but it's a really interesting question. And so this is just one little piece. So this location here is where the person is looking, but it's also where the foot goes 2 steps later. And so it's very tempting to think that the structure for motion is really important. It could easily be important for finding a good place to put your foot. And so again, we don't know what is a good place to put your foot. What are the visual? So you get about 2 or 3 fixations. Like when you're walking along at this pace, and you've got to find somewhere to put your foot. You go, boop, boop, boop. You know, maybe no more than 3 fixations per foot placement. And so you're somehow or other analyzing the image, finding good places and bad places, and we don't know really what those are and how does it happen so quickly.
I looked at the picture, like most of the visual flow magnitude was below fixation, which is sort of where you've already been, which seems it's not helpful.
There are many things that we don't, I mean, in particular, don't understand about this. And one thing is, a lot of the time, so you fixate, and then as you move, you're counter-rotating. The eyeball's counter-rotating in the orbit. So maybe something to, that's the modal kind of thing is fixate, rotate that as your body comes forward. And so it may be something about the geometry, maybe.
Yeah, it's not where you've already been. It's all in front of you where
Well,
you're going. You want
in some
to
sense.
get the flow field and the structure of the field. So the part, the structure in this part can be
So yeah, so so yeah. Oh, all right. Questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I might have missed that. What was the task that was given to the people walking on the rocks? Was the task that they just walk on the rocks, or are they given the task to say cross a river or something? So do they have a task with a goal in mind? Or
They just they are told to walk up to, say, a certain point, walk up to the something in the distance. So it's quite a long walk. And it will be just some feature, so they're not told anything. There are no specific instructions, just to walk normally.
The reason I'm asking is because when I look at this video data, like when I'm given a goal, then sometimes I look up and I kind of check, is there a path that I can trace back to where I am at this point in time? Maybe you're just not showing those in the videos that you put up.
Yeah, we did different kinds of terrain. And so there's a normal kind of path. And what happens then is you spend a lot more time up here. Yeah, John has that data. So, and as you know, when you're walking down a corridor, you don't need to look at the ground at all. You know where it is. And so, so that's sort of one of the things is how do the gaze strategies change with the task amounts like that, and so that's all to be further understood. And so so one of the interesting things is that even in the medium terrain, you find that people slow down, so they have the natural comfortable walking pace. Once you introduce a certain amount of complexity, the speed goes down. So that already says that the issue, there's more than just energy. This foot placement is starting to be important, because why do you slow down? You don't have enough time to find that right place. So, yeah.
The most dangerous thing about walking is when you think it's going to be flat, there's some crack in the sidewalk.
Yeah, well, I think we've got all kinds of really nice I mean, you have to have incredibly good priors for that, right? So, because there's another video of John walking across the road, and that eye is right on the curb. So, so you typically find those. Mostly we don't fall flat on our faces. Sometimes we do. Was there another question that I missed? We're cool. Okay. Okay. So yeah. So the flow patterns aren't constant. Is the first thing, but they're modulating with gait. And so how do we understand that? We don't really know. It's not clear that the focus of expansion has anything to do with the direction of heading. So that's a whole big thing that needs to be looked at. And so I think, again, I'm sort of excited about these CNNs too, because I kind of think that you probably learn the statistics of these flow patterns when you're walking through environments, even rooms, rocks, and things like that. And so I think you know very well exactly what should be happening, how the visual fields should be deforming as you walk. And so for sure you're using that flow, but exactly how, and so that's an interesting question for future investigation. Okay. And so I think the broader question which has raised this is, so our armchair theorizing is like, wow, there's this neat focus of expansion stuff. Well, it tells you where you're heading, so okay, you use it for heading. But we don't actually know that you need it. So when do you need to control your heading? So you can see a target, you can point your body towards it, and every now and again you check. Okay, so we need answers to those questions. Like, to what extent do you need to control your heading? And my guess is not much, probably. And so on terrain like this, you're concerned with choosing foot placement and keeping it in generally the same direction, and you might check every now and again and see if you're sort of on target. But we don't know what this breakdown is. So how much is controlling foot placement? What are the costs and things that you're trading off? Again, on this very rapid time scale, how does it all happen so fast? What's controlling when you look up? And so the timing of gaze up looking ahead is what my suspicion is. It's very carefully timed to a particular point in the gait cycle where it doesn't, where it's okay to allow vision to go up and get that other information. So I think that's an interesting question. So now I want to talk about memory. And again, I think that this is just really important in natural vision. So again, as a good vision scientist, I was brought up on, the visual stimulus was directing my gaze, right? And so we naturally think and again, all the saliency models are really based on this premise that it's something to do with the stimulus that makes you look there, okay? But I think that's very, if you look at natural vision, it's very different. So you look where you want to look, and a lot of the time this is based on some kind of memory representation of the scene, and then you gather that extra little additional bit of information that you need when you need it. This is actually an instrument of torture that we no longer use. It's NVIS head mount display and the eye tracker in it. And so you're walking, this is a bird's eye view of the virtual apartment. This is work by Serial Lee. And so you can just walk around and explore the apartment and look for things. They're searching for these little targets, and so the targets can be they're actually on these surfaces, on these 8 surfaces. Sorry, I just already said that. You're moving around, searching, and so here's what it looks like from the head mount display. And this is the first time you're looking for this blue vase. You go in the wrong room, you have no idea where it is, so you spend a bunch of time looking around in the correct room, and so you find it after, these are easy targets. Now this is only the 3rd time you've looked for this, and you go to the correct room and you find it within a couple of fixations. So you more or less immediately switch to a memory-based strategy. So visual search is in this case not terrifically visual. So if you, again, these are bird's eye views, and the target is here. And so this is the first time you search for this target. Lots and lots of fixations in the incorrect room. Here, you find it pretty quickly. The second time, you go into the incorrect room again, but many fewer fixations, and you see that they're restricted to these surfaces. And then by the 3rd episode, you just go straight to the target, okay? So even when these searches are very easy, you have to take into account the fact that you've got to lug the body around. And so when you're lugging the body around, this memory-based strategy makes a lot more sense. And so I won't go into the evidence, but it does look like you have this sort of hierarchical structure. So you learn the correct room. That's first of all, just parsing the larger space into these rooms, and you learn what room it is. You very rapidly learn to look on surfaces, and it seems like you've actually got a big prior for looking at surfaces, where on the surface, or surfaces versus non-surfaces, and then a particular surface and where on the surface. And so this is just a nice, so what happens here? So in the fourth trial, we moved the location of the target. So it used to be here, and now it got moved to this new location. And so we'll show the eye is the pink vector, and the head is the red one. Why that's not playing? Oh, there it is. So you can see they're pointing at the old location, and they keep looking, and then eventually they start looking else. Another interesting thing is that if you look at the head, and the head tends to be pointing towards the location of the target, and this door is closed. So even as you're walking down the corridor, you're already moving your body towards the remembered location. And so, again, this is we need to get more data and analyze this, but it looks like the big reason that you want to use memory is, again, that you can just choose much more efficient body movements. And this is the integrated distance traveled as a function of the trial number or blocks of trials. This is the change in the head angle, and these are just different target locations. But you can see that, again, the amount, the integrated movement just gets a lot smaller very rapidly. And this just says, hey, it's really important. You don't like to move your body around if you don't need to. And so this is just a very big constraint, I think, on natural movements. Okay.
So
yeah.
When he wasn't in the anticipated location, they moved to the larger open part of the room. That's energetics as well, because the probability that the new one will be in the larger area is higher. So on average, they save energy by moving in that direction.
Sorry, that you're suggesting they move towards the.
If you look at that arrow,
yeah,
up toward the open area.
Yeah.
They didn't look at the smaller areas, right?
No, they knew, by that time, they knew it was going to be on a surface. And so there's another video I can retrieve at some point, but where it wasn't actually in the room at all, it was in the other room. And so they look at each surface, they go back, and then like they do this about, it's like, it's got to be here, it's got to be here, you know. So they've got a very strong prayer that it should be on a surface and it should be in this room. And when it's not, sometimes it takes them a while to give up on that. So.
You know, I'd like to make a general observation about the methodology that in general comes here, and that is these cameras, and it's true the VR as well, have limited field of view. Big difference between a lot of the naturalistic stuff and this study here is that there you're actually seeing the visual information people have to work with, and that's what that restricted field of view. In Chen's and Karen's and these other things, you get a sample of a portion of it, but they're actually working with a much larger field.
This is 100 degrees, so it's not bad. You know, 100 degrees is not bad. Right. I agree. I mean, it would not be any different from 180, you know. Sunglasses, wearing sunglasses. I mean, you know, this stuff out here is not, I doubt that I use it a whole lot. Also, you're looking at sort of smallish targets. So I think it depends. These are really important unanswered questions. We don't know. And so how much do you use this stuff out here? Don't know. As for a small, I would say, you know, for a small object, which is say like, these objects are like 1 or 2 degrees of visual angle. This is probably not that important. So I think, but what you're doing, and probably this is why it makes sense to have strategies like look at surfaces, look where a small thing. So you may be, so you select this part of the room, that part of the room, and then the surfaces. And this also gets your body pointing in roughly the right direction first, and then you can find it easily. It's pretty easy. So, yeah, I take your point. 100 degrees is, but and I think it's a very important point to be not, the old ones used to be like 45 degrees and horrible. Yeah.
So this data seems like it's perfectly useful for applying Bill Geisler's visual search, Bayesian visual search algorithm for finding that little symbol. It's not really expensive.
Yeah, I think that this kind of, this is a lot easier. It's just a blue blob. Once that blue blob is in the visual field, you got it.
It's easy.
It's easy. It's really easy. Yeah. All right. So I want to just focus now on the transitions from one day's location to the next. And so this is one way of conceptualizing the behavior of walking, like walking across the street, is you got to do these little subtasks, and we don't know what they are. But let's assume that there's some set of things that you need to do that depend on the context. And so you need to avoid obstacles, so you have to, at some point, do visual searches for an object, obstacles, find where it is relative to the body. You also need to know where am I in the environment, how far across the road am I, all that kind of thing. And so this sort of visual data is being stored in working memory. And so some of the data is, you looked at the other side of the road, 3 seconds ago. That information is probably still good. You may not need to check up on that. So something is regulating how often do you need to update information. And so one hypothesis is it depends, well, actually on how important it is, but also on how degraded that information is about. So when there's this famous experiment that Dana talks about where this crazy person is driving along the road, and he's allowing himself vision of the scene. He's got this helmet that comes down and blocks his vision, and he manipulated the rate at which he was allowed to see the scene. Right? If you close your eyes when you're driving, you can only stand to do that for like a second or 2 seconds or something. So it depends a lot. So at some point for really critical information, you just got to get more information. And so this is actually, I'm running out of time, Jen, aren't I? How much longer should I do? 5 minutes? Okay. This is another VR experiment. And so again, meant to simulate something general like walking across the road. You've got to intercept these targets and avoid these obstacles. And so to make things difficult, so you have to walk on the path, collect the blue things, and avoid the brownie things. And so we did this manipulation of uncertainty. So we on some conditions, we added motion to these objects so that once you looked at it, it wouldn't necessarily be in the same place, okay? And so this is just a depiction of that. The objects either stationary or moving around. And so, let's look at this one, gaze to obstacles. And so this is where they're stationary, the low uncertainty. When we make them moving, the high uncertainty. And so it depends on whether it's something you need to do or not. So when you are told to be sure to avoid the obstacles, then the uncertainty matters. If the obstacles are irrelevant and they're not sort of defined as obstacles, then it doesn't matter. So this is just a vote that the reason that you look at something, it's a complex joint action of how important it is and your state of uncertainty about that object. Interestingly, the targets that you have to intercept, this effect is quite a bit weaker, and it's not entirely clear why. It's sort of ho-hum. So again, I think just a little memo that there's a lot of stuff we don't understand. I just want to finish now by talking about an approach to these problems that's been actually pretty useful over the last 10 years or so. And Walford and Landy wrote a review of this, and they called motor control as decision making. And so they look at the elements of statistical decision theory and go through a lot of the evidence for these things. And so I'll just change the title to visual motor control as decision making. And the things that we've talked about here, as we've talked about memory, or we can think of the importance of prior. So you've got sensory data, you got your prior or your information stored in memory to estimate the state of the world. We also talked about the importance of the cost function in making a decision, where to look, where to point your body. But what isn't in this original description is what's controlling this transition from gaze one location to gaze another location. And so we've talked about that you update on both the basis of costs and uncertainty. And so again, just to step back a little bit, to say, why is it important to look at natural behaviors? What can we learn? And I think that you definitely get a feeling for what's important, like Karen, I think, that's the message is like, whoa, we didn't know this was so important. And so the rewards and costs and memory, it's just like once you get the body to speak to you, it tells you what's important. And so then you're faced with the issue of how do you make these rather complex calculations so effortlessly on such a short time scale. I think the other nice thing about looking at behavior is you realize that, again, you have to situate your questions in the larger behavioral context. And otherwise, you don't really know what the right question is. And again, I think the infant work is also saying exactly that same thing. It's like that once you start sort of putting the pieces together, you get a sense for new questions emerge from that effort. Another thing is, I think that's really interesting is that the very lawful nature of natural behavior. Again, it's not that it's looking at a computer monitor often is very noisy data, and that's probably because it doesn't actually matter where you're looking. When you're going to fall down the steps, it really matters where you're looking. And so a lot of the time, the behavior is very, very regular. Finding that paradigm where you've got enough constraints on the behavior so that there's not too much randomness is, I think, a challenge and something that we need to be aware of. And then we talked about the questions, again, that you can only ask in the context of natural behavior is okay, you looked here, why are you looking there at this time? And so, again, if you look at the things like making a sandwich, the timing of the movements is really incredibly beautifully orchestrated. And again, I think that this is a wide open question. It's like, you're folding the bread up and sort of like you were looking here, you're looking at this, and then as soon as the bread becomes vertical and it's about to tip over, then you're looking at the next gaze point. And so there's this beautiful orchestration of the timing of movements, again, that I think is wide open. And then what do we need to do when we walk? Again, pausing the tasks that the brain has to do for these natural behaviors is, again, I think, a wide open challenge. And so that's That's it.
So, two more questions. Maybe the other one, question. So, the first question is: have you thought about using augmented reality instead of your virtual environment? Have you talked to Meta? These folks that were at the SS this year, that's it there now working. They seem to have a very good visual system. They've done the visual part very well. And because some of these, you could use a real room and add objects to the real room, which would create even more natural environment.
I hadn't actually thought about it until this VSS,
Okay.
and the Baldassi, I think, raised that question, and I thought, wow, that would be really good, particularly for things like walking to get, because there's no way that you can simulate that. So I think it would be really good. Yeah, I'm quite excited about that, and sort of trying to think about ways.
And the comment is that I think what Jim was calling assignment of action, assignment alignment, task alignment is what you call task decomposition. So I think that his algorithm actually would apply to in a certain way to do what you need to do to decode what the brain is doing.
Well, okay.
His algorithm is trying to align labels to actions, right?
I mean, the caveat is that I'm going from essentially a static description like a recipe where you're not really, it just gives you an ordering and it's very coarse. That's very different.
No, but she has probably a finite set of labels. For example, if you're walking, there's a finite set of labels that she already proposed in your talk, right? You have to avoid risk, you have to see climbing, you have to do, and those are the labels that my understanding you guys use to take the continuous film and assign, right?
I guess if I think about a plan, I think about like a state machine. Like you're in a certain configuration, various things can happen. Some are outside your control. You have to react to changes. Some are under your control, and that's a very sort of rich representation. In contrast, recipe is just like, here's the things you need to do, but it's far from the state machine you need to have in your head to actually handle. So a telephone call arrives, so you got to take the call, pause what you're doing, you do it, then you come back and your kids are about the house on fire, you'll deal with that. It's just so much more going on than the recipe.
Yeah, I would say first pass, yes, but I think it's still, if you're looking up in it requires some experimental analysis, because if you're looking up ahead, what are you doing? We don't know, basically. So unfortunately, gaze is really good if you're picking things up. If you're picking a cup up and you're looking at the handle, we know why you're looking at the handle. But when you're walking, and these are a little messier, and so yeah, I think it's a good first pass.
So one of the best ways to learn about how these systems work might be to distort or remove parts of the system that you order to use. So you could set 100 degrees, field of view, give them 10, or take out the full view, or put braces on your knees so you can't bend them, or other things like
Actually,
this.
that's smart.
So that you can see what happens when you can't rely on your knowledge base. These things that have to adjust. See where they look at and where they do. Change.
Yeah, I think I actually all of those things have been done, and the answers are a little hard to pin down too, because we're so flexible, and we can't use this cue. Let's use another one, And so yeah, no, I think these are not easy answers. Yeah.
I also just wanted to say, I think that the memory question is very interesting, and in the study that Jim mentioned with the cooking, we actually it was a kitchen that we have on the Georgia Tech campus as part of like a house, the research center, and so the students did not. It was not a familiar kitchen to them. It was kind of like if you're cooking in your friend's kitchen and you kind of know where stuff should be, and so there's like such a. Some of our participants came back and did multiple sessions. And so one of the things I don't think we're nearly there, what would be interesting to compare in that data set is looking at the people who are returning.
Yeah, it would be very interesting. Yeah, that's nice. There's a lot of that data that would be just really nice to have.
I'm so struck with this because I want to know how it works developmentally. I mean, I think that infant data, not as clean and perfectly synchronized as adults, but it's not like gaze control is not random for walking. I mean, for controlling locomotion. And they are, finding obstacles ahead of time. And I mean a natural walking, like running around a room with like crap all over the floor that they don't want to trip on. But like the memory piece, I'm trying to think how would one study it in a parallel way, and I'm not sure that there's any, that they are remembering where things are. And babies are not optimizers. Like they really don't care.
No,
they're lugging their body around.
They're explorers.
Fun.
And
not like I'll wait an hour before I go to the bathroom. Like, they just do what they just do it.
Totally.
Totally.
I'm
so curious how to get into this like efficient use of memory against visual search.
I think there are lots of fascinating developmental questions. We don't know what those cost functions are. How do they change?
This question, instead of knocking it out of an adult who already is doing it, like trying to see how it comes in someone who isn't doing it. It's clear that they have different. I mean, I think just in kids' attention, it's like, as a parent, you're their attention mechanism until they're like about 7. It's like, don't do that. What do so there's an awful lot of learning involved. I think of just learning all those statistics.
Okay, great.